Hello guys, this is Beamer, your instructor. So here's the video I was talking about using GIMP for color models and also for image processing. So I'm just going to do a really quick video here. We'll do some more stuff later. So let's get started, and so let's go ahead and bring up GIMP. So here I've got GIMP. I went ahead and preloaded it because it takes a little while to load with all the libraries. And notice I've put an image in here, and this is the image that actually is included in the C programs I gave you for image processing. So first thing, what I did was talked about using the color picker to pick different points. But first, let's go ahead and select that. That's the color picker tool. And let's go into here and notice that we have like the RGB model, color model. And then here we either have the LCH or the SHV model. And so these are the two models that I talked about that I want you to read over. And notice that you got here, you can basically go in and select values or whatever, or choose what you want. But for here, the assignment was to basically go in and pick some various values and record the values for the RGB and the HSV, or hue, saturation, and I forget what V is. But anyway, let's go ahead and let's click right here. And so you'll notice that that's kind of white. Let's get over and get more of a yellow type color. And so here you'll notice that you got red and green here, kind of mixing, and very little blue. And then so these make your yellow type color, and we'll play around with that a little bit more. So what you would do is record these values for the R, G, and B, and you would also record these values for the HSV, the 42 and there. And so I forget how many points I said, but you just basically go in and click some different points. So click some points corresponding to different colors. Here's blue, and notice that it's a little bit more blue than the others, but you still got some other colors there. And then for the hue, you notice that it's actually coming in here and doing a little bit more of the blue, and then you get the saturation and the V value here. So that's all the assignment called for, was that. While we're at it, let me so that's the color picker. So let's just get this out. Now let me just show you something here. This right here is different channels, red, green, and blue, and alpha, and we'll talk more about these later. But look what happens if I only allow the red component. So this image here has each pixel in here has a red, a green, and a blue value. And so notice that here I'm only showing the red channel. Okay, so here you have lots of red, and here it's really dark. Let's go in and look at the green, and so you notice, hey, you got some green values here too. And then here's the blue. And so obviously when you go in and enable all three of these, you see the whole picture. But the point here is that there's blue and green and red pretty much in components of each one of these pixels here. And of course here is really dark. So dark corresponds to, well, let's go back to the color picker here. So dark corresponds to pretty much 0 values for everything, whereas white corresponds to really high values for everything here. Anyway, that's just a quick look at RGB stuff. Also, if we get out of this here, and let's just go to the pencil here, and let's make some colors here. Notice that if you have everything 0 for the RGB value, and I can just make this 0 here, then what you have is black. If we make everything max, then what we're talking about is white, okay? And if we make all three equal, then what we have is a shade of gray, okay? And so how many shades of gray are there? How many people watch movies? So anyway, there's quite a few shades of gray in reality. So as long as these are three equal, you have gray. Now, where you get the interesting things is where you basically don't have them all equal. And so if you got red, notice that what happens here is you got the green and the blue 0, but as you slowly increase the red, it gets redder and redder, right? And notice what happens here is that with all of them black, look at the hue, saturation, and value, and notice what happens is the red increases. The hue stays the same, it's pointing to the red, but what happens here is the saturation is gone up and the value is gone up, okay? So pure red, you got saturation maximum, you got value maximum, and you got the hue right at the red, and here blue and green's there. Now what if I bring up the green? Well, with the green and the red max, then I've got yellow and I've got this. Now here again, if I go in and I start reducing these values, then I get different forms of yellow, okay? Now here they're equal, but I can go in and get different stuff here, okay? Now, what if I go in and I get the green and the blue? Well, there I've got, let's see, green and blue and red 0. So I've got like what, an aqua type color, turquoise, something like that. If I go in and make the red and the blue, then I've got a violet or a pink type color. So anyway, and you can see that changing these colors, the hue is really the thing that's kind of showing you color, whereas the value and the saturation here are basically the amount of color that's in there. But if you were looking and trying to decide whether a color was green or red or whatever, looking at the RGB would be a little difficult because you got components of all the colors in here with the RGB. But with the HSV model, you know, basically this kind of gives you your colors, you know, within limits depending on your saturation and your value here. But you can see, you know, looking at this little rainbow here, that the hue is what's actually giving you the color, okay? Well, anyway, so that's a quick look at the color models. Okay, now let's go in and look at some of the image processing. And the first thing I want to look at is, let's look at colors. And I want to look at desaturate and color to gray. And so this is what's commonly called a grayscale. And so what I'm doing here is basically going in and changing this to a grayscale. Now what that does is, with the red, green, and blue values, is they're all equal, okay, and are in your thing. Now the way that you go in and convert a color image into a grayscale, there are several ways. One way, you could actually take the RG and B values and take an average, divide them by 3, that is, and replace your all pixel values with that. And then there's other things other ways you can do, which involves taking a certain percentage of the red, a certain percentage of the blue, a certain percentage of the green, and then basically a weighted average, and replacing all 3 values, the RG and B values, with that average value. Grayscales is one of the first things that you do in a lot of image processing. So we'll talk about that later, but right now we're just kind of showing what you can do with this. So you could go in and do this, and so I'm going to just cancel this and bring back to color. Now let's get into some of our image processing. And so if you go over here, one other thing that you'll do is some type of blur, okay? And so here, let's do a Gaussian blur of the image, and let's go in and click OK. And it looks a little blurry. Let's do it again. Gaussian blur, and let's do OK. And you can see it's starting to blur. Now what the blur does is it basically goes in and makes the transition in values from pixel to pixel not as sharp. So it kind of smooths it out, the pictures. Okay, so let's go here back to, well, let's do it some more. Repeat. And basically, actually we can do Control F. So let's do Control F a bunch of times so it gets really kind of blurry. Okay, and notice, you really see here the face is really, and you're starting to see it in here, but really, it's really smoothed out the image. That's really what a blur is doing. Okay, so let's go back to filters here, and let's reset. Should be able to do this. So it's taking a little while to do it. See what I'm going to do. I don't want to wait for this to go back and reset it, so I'm going to do File and Close. Okay, and let's go back and open it back up. Okay, and view. Alright, so we're back to the normal. Let's do another one. Let's go to Filter. Let's go to here, Sharpen and Unsharp. This is how you can sharpen up the image. I won't do this because it's not really that blurry right now. Let's look at another one. Let's look light, generic. Two very important ones are Dilate and Erode. Now Dilate, when you get your eyes dilated, what you're doing is open up your pupils so that you can basically get more light in. And so what it does is it makes the image lighter. So let's do this a couple of times and see what happens. And so let's do Control F a couple of times and see if we can see what's happening. Well, first off, we see that the lady's teeth are much wider. Okay, and so what it does is it makes white spots whiter. It gets rid of dark spots. If you have some little speckled blocks and stuff, and what it does is it basically does this by going in and just making the neighbors of a white spot even bigger. Okay, so you kind of, I think you kind of see that, like her face has gotten all whiter, her teeth has gotten really, really white, and wow, so it's really doing that. So let's go back here and let's reset and see if it does it faster this time. Probably not. I did so many of them. Okay, let's go ahead and do the same thing again. I guess it's going to be quicker. So let's close all. Discard changes. Recent. Okay, and then go back to here. Fit image one. Okay, so what I want to do now is the opposite. And so this time here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and do Erode. Now what Erode does is basically like closing your pupils and making the image more dark. And so what you're going to see is grow darker areas of the image. Okay, so let's do this. Control F. Oh, I don't want that. Filters. Control F. And you can see everything's getting darker. You see your eyes. Yeah, and so you're growing the dark areas. If you have some white speckles, then you'll get rid of those if you do this enough. And so let's go back to filters, and let's go in, and I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing here. Reset. It just takes so long. So let's go in and let's do the same thing here. Close all, discard changes, reset. Okay, so let's see what else we got here. Another one that's a useful thing is edge detect, and what it does is finds lines. Now what we probably want to do before we do this is go in and turn it into a grayscale, and so let's do that. Let's go over to colors, go to desaturate, color to gray, Okay, there you go. And so we have a grayscale. Now while we're here, let's go in and just see something here. Now notice that what this will have is it's got equal amounts of red, or not equal, but well, yes it does. It's grayscale, so it's equal amounts of red, green, and blue in here. So if you go and take them all away, it's black. If you put them all there, then it's the grayscale. But going in and looking at the color picker now, what we'll see is that they're fairly equal picking any point here. These are equal, here's equal, and so darker, these three equal values are going to be closer to 0, and brighter, these three are going to be closer over to here to 100. So that's what your grayscale is doing, is it's making your R, G, and B values all equal. Okay. All right, so there's your grayscale. Now let's go back and let's do the filter here, and let's do the edge detect. And so let's just go in and let's do, well, we do difference of Gaussians here. And then, okay. Now notice what it did is it replaced the image with lines, and so you have horizontal and vertical lines where there's a transition, okay, where there's over a threshold, and we could go in and do different settings here. Let's do filters. Let's reset. Let's go and do a different one. Let's do edge detect here, and let's do this one here. Okay, and this has got a bunch of stuff here, and I'd have to do some more stuff like blur it first. I probably should have blurred it before I did this, but this is really useful for finding shapes like squares and circles and lines and things like that. And so that's called edge detecting, because you're looking for edges. Okay, all right, that's really all I want to show you about this. Let me show you something really quick here. So let's minimize this. And let's go in, and I downloaded this editor here for Hex, and let's open up the file we were just looking at. And so let's see, let's go to Documents and Image Processing. Let's look at this. And so what we see is these are all the bytes that are in this image. This is how this image is stored. Okay. Now we're no longer at grayscale because the image I just opened up was the original, but you'll notice that you have all these values here. And if you go in and look at the wiki document that I did that showed you what the bitmap format is you'll see that these first 2 bytes here are actually showing you what as a bitmap, is identifying this as a bitmap. And then if you go through that chart that they have in the wiki document, then you'll find that there's a location here. Each one of these locations corresponds to bytes that signify something about the image, the width and everything else. Let me bring that up here real quick. Let's see here. Well, I don't. Anyway, we'll do this in another video. But anyway, this is what the hex files look. And what you're going to do is you're going to look at that wiki document, and for the bitmap, you're going to go through and find out which one of these bytes here are actually corresponding to the width, and you'll figure out what it is based in here. You'll look and see which ones correspond to the height in pixels, the color model, and I believe this is a 24-bit. It's red, green, and blue. I don't think there's there for the transparency, but what you'll see is down in here somewhere is where you have all the pixel information, and then up in here is where you're going to have the information that describes, it's like the headers, that describes where everything is and describes the image, whereas this is actually the red, green, and blue values that correspond to the different pixels. Alright, that's all I wanted to show you today. So let's see here. So anyway, have fun. Hopefully this gets you started so you can do what you needed to do. And remember, all this stuff is due Friday by 5 p.m. So anyway, have fun.